Well, welcome again to Business Block with Miriam O'Gara. And today I have a wonderful lady on the show. Her name is Derval Dunford, and she is here to talk about her wonderful new company. Well, it's not that new actually, but it has morphed a little bit. It's called See Mindfulness. You're very welcome indeed, Derval.
Miriam, thanks very much. It's great to be here with you.
Derval, talk to us. Where are you right now? Somewhere in the west of Ireland.
In the west of Ireland, in the lovely town of Westport, in the pouring rain, unfortunately. But sure, what can you do?
I love Westport. Absolutely wonderful. Is it busy at the moment?
It is busy, yeah. There's a good few visitors around. It's one of those places I think everybody just seems to love. So very popular now that we have a little bit of freedom. Wow.
Now, I also noticed that you've been down so many different roads. Just tell me about how See Mindfulness came together for you.
Yeah, very long story. Starts a very long time ago when the seed was initially sown in terms of mental and emotional health, and I suppose how far one way I went and how much I came back then to the other side as such. So when I was 18, I was involved in a fatal car accident. It was a head-on collision with a truck. My father was driving the car and my father was killed instantly. I was behind my father in the car and my brother was next to me. My mother was in the front. And basically, that's a long time ago because I was 18, obviously. And in those days, it was almost as if in Ireland, you know, mental health or any kind of mental or emotional health didn't exist, you know. So physically, we actually weren't very well looked after either. The hospital that we were brought to at the time made a lot of mistakes and we suffered as a result. But mentally and emotionally, nobody ever asked me, you know, do you need to talk to somebody? Are you okay? Nothing like that, nothing. And we just got on with it and got on with it very badly, as sort of Irish people tend to not talk, you know. And so we just didn't really talk about it. It was a huge trauma and it was just sort of, it just was like, okay, that's happened. Let's try and move on. And I actually didn't realize it at the time, but I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I knew I wasn't right, but I had no idea whether it was grief or what. I didn't know. And so that, I suppose, was the start of it. About a year later, I was pregnant. I was in college in Galway. And obviously that wasn't an ideal situation on top of the post-traumatic stress disorder, which I didn't even know was there. And it was tough. It was a really tough time. I left college and my son, Stevie, was born. And, you know, he's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
But it was tough.
It was. I'm sure it was. Oh, my gosh.
So it was probably, I'd say he was probably about 9 months old or something when I actually went to talk to somebody. And this guy said to me, Derval, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I think you need to see a psychiatrist. And I said, no, I don't mind at all. I'm actually delighted because I knew I needed help. So I just, whoever, whatever, I didn't care, you know. I tried to talk to this person and I couldn't talk. I just cried and cried and cried. I couldn't get a word out and I felt ridiculous. And I thought he's going to think, oh my God, what's wrong with her, you know, but he knew exactly what was wrong with me. And so then I got some help and I was on a lot of medication for a lot of years and I was in a very difficult place. And I suppose when I started coming out of that, I was really interested in that whole aspect of, you know, the mind. And as I said, you know, at the start, how far you can go one way and then how you can come back. It might take a long time and you might need a lot of support, but quite incredible, you know, the journey. And so I started to become interested in meditation. I was trying lots of different things. I used to go to retreats, all sorts of stuff, but I'm naturally not a Zen type person. I'm naturally a very busy kind of person. I like to be very productive. I'm a real doer, you know, and I know ideas. I get ideas. And then when I get the idea, I want to move on, you know. So anytime I started any meditations, you know, I was really interested and, you know, it was lovely, but my head was all over the place and I found it very hard to continue a daily practice. It felt like a waste of time, honestly. So that went on for years and years and I still knew there was something in it and I did lots of training and stuff. And I was getting more and more, but I was nearly taking in more and more information, you know, rather than practicing in earnest on a daily basis, because it's so hard to do, you know, especially when you feel like you're just sitting there and your head is all over the place. So you think, what's the point? You know, I could have been doing something useful. And then what happened was in my early 30s, I suffered from chronic fatigue. And this chemical sensitivity where I was basically like really sensitive to all chemically fragrance products, and it was really, really hard. And I went from going at 100 miles an hour to going at 0 miles an hour, and my energy was so low. I was wasn't fit to work. I wasn't fit to socialize. So I had my own lockdown at that point. And it was then I had the time, I had the space, and I knew I needed to do something to maintain a bit of sanity in the midst of that chaos. And then I started in earnest my daily practice and lots of different bits and pieces that I had been gathering over the years. And I just kept at it, and I knew I had to do it, and I wanted to do it. And I needed something to structure my day as well, you know. So even in the midst of the illness, I needed to be productive in some way, and that was my productivity. But what happened was, practicing on a daily basis, I realized what you can only realize when you really do it every day and you stay with it every day for a long period of time, that it really works.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I have to share this with other people. I don't know how exactly, or I don't know what I need to do in order to do that, but I'll start and I'll keep chipping away. And that's what I did.
Absolutely fantastic. Oh my gosh. And you know, on two levels there, I can totally identify and connect with you on that. I've been diagnosed with PTSD myself.
Okay.
From years ago, and you do keep it in check. I didn't go on meds. The cognitive approach was the way for me. But when I was 40, I'm 56 now, when I was 40, the chemical sensitivity that you're talking about, I had exactly the same experience when I hit 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And funnily enough, it was after a couple of major life changes, coupled, I think, with going into that new decade and big changes going on in your life, and a move back to Ireland again.
Okay. That was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I don't think we're educated enough as young people, as a younger person then, about how your immune system, how it responds to huge life changes, one after another like that, you know?
Absolutely. And also the sensitivity of your body at that stage in life. I mean, that's, you know, it's hugely sensitive. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because I know I had a car crash as well. I was on the M20 and my kidneys were damaged. But what I found after that was that any antibiotic that I was given, I became hyper allergic to. And then I had a massive allergic reaction that nearly killed me. And I had about 6, 7 of those in that 6 months that I turned 40. So that's when I knew, that's when it happened. So I've stayed away from antibiotics for 16 years now. I know what to avoid. And although avoiding things is not a good idea, when it comes to certain chemicals like that, you do have to avoid them. You've noticed. So when I read that in your bio, I just thought, this is just amazing. I've got to talk to this woman because I know exactly what you're talking about. Your early PTSD experience, of course, was one of the worst types I think that anybody could be involved in, to have a family member killed and you're involved in that accident. What was it like to rebuild, even going into your 30s, to rebuild that side of yourself and to, you know, to cope with the PTSD, knowing where its root is, but to really just face it? I mean, how did you manage that?
Honestly, I think it probably wouldn't be the route I'd go, you know, at this stage with all of the practices that I have and all of the experience that I have. But I mean, I actually needed, at the time when I was diagnosed, I needed that medication because I was so far, you know, gone, and it was there for so long. I needed that support. So that actually really did help me, and I needed it. And there are certain situations where you need that kind of support.
Yes.
And I could feel myself coming out of that. It took, I think, about 3 years. And to get off the meds and all of that took a long time. But I could feel myself coming out of it. And I could feel myself started thinking, I don't need to be here. I don't need to take this. I can definitely do without. But it all had to be a slow process. But I actually felt that I was in a really good place then after that. And I actually moved to Westport after that. I was in Dublin at the time. But in my early 30s, I was in quite a good place, but I actually feel that I hadn't, maybe the trauma was still in my body, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Education and all that had dealt with my mind and helped me to come back. And then all my meditation and everything had helped me and supported me. But I had been working very hard as well. And I had been kind of burning the candle at both ends because I tend to be productive. I was working for myself. And it's very hard to say no to people. And so I feel that I got to a stage where I had been just doing too much for too long. And I think the trauma was still in my body. And
yes.
That's what happened, you know.
Yeah, and I've heard it said, I mean, certainly it has been said to me on my journey with it that, you know, trauma does not recognize time. It's not a respecter of time. It doesn't think to itself, you know, well, okay, my place was in her life 16 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Time is irrelevant and it can just appear again. I think that's a message that is something that PTSD people need to be quite conscious of, that you may feel that you've left it behind you, but it only takes a certain set of circumstances to, in an instant, re-trigger something. And that can be very disappointing to you when you feel that happen. You can feel quite low and you can feel, oh gosh, I really thought I had a handle on this. Why is this happening to me again? Whatever that symptom is that really upset you at the time, it can reoccur, and it's quite likely that it will reoccur. And I think we're not told that very early on. Maybe clinicians are reluctant to say to us, look, you know, you've hit this marker. This means something. Don't be surprised if it reoccurs again, because what you want to do is you want to get over it, you know.
Absolutely, like everything else. Yeah, leave it behind and move on.
In lockdown, I think it's come back. How have you, in your business now, how have you found the experience of working with clients in the 16 months that we've had?
Well, I suppose, a lot of the initial time, initially in lockdown, I had 6 months with Social Entrepreneurs Ireland. I was doing a program with them.
Yes.
And then another 6 months basically with Social Impact Ireland. I did another program with them. So I was kind of busy and focused on that, and focused on my new pilot breathwork program for schools. I was developing that with them, and that is a social enterprise. So that took up a lot of my time and a lot of my focus. I was also doing some extra training with these two psychiatrists, Patricia Gerberg and Richard Brown, in the States, and that took up some more time and energy. And meanwhile, I was really trying to reinvent everything online. I didn't want to just go straight online, because I felt everybody was just hopping straight online and doing a lot of stuff, and a lot of mindfulness-based stuff free, which is great. And they were saying people needed it and everything, and they did. But, you know, it's very hard to know. Everybody's an individual, and, you know, different things suit different people. And people were saying to me, why don't you do stuff online? Everybody is doing it. And I just wanted to wait, and I wanted to get it right. And I wanted to make sure that I could give people a really good sort of experience online, and not make it just trying to do it online and trying to make it fit online. So I spent a lot of time figuring out what would work and what's the best way to do it. And I did a lot of work with the education centres, so with primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, who were extremely stressed, still are extremely stressed, God love them. So I did a lot of work with them, because I've had a huge background with them, and I sort of know what they're going through and what is useful for them, because I've dealt with a lot of them and I've heard their stories.
So you are, when you're working with the schools, are you working primarily then with the staff, or are you working with the children as well?
Yeah, both.
Both. Right. Well, mindfulness in the classroom is something that is so new to people still, isn't it?
Yeah, it pretty much is. There's a lot of teachers that just obviously veer that direction, and they just sort of know, and it's because they actually practice themselves and they know it. And that's the only way. You know, you can't convince people, and I never want to convince people, but I love the skeptics, because I love when I have skeptics in my class, and I just go, great, absolutely perfect, just give it a go and see then what you think. because there's nothing better than a skeptic that's converted, you know, to spread the word of mouth.
But you're working with the staff as well and the students. So how would you bring mindfulness in? How would you recommend they bring mindfulness into their classroom?
Just in the simplest way possible, really, which is why I'm using mindfulness now as the foundation, but I'm using breathwork as the action. And as I said to you earlier, you know, I'm a doer, so I like the action. So I've been teaching mindfulness since 2006, and I've been teaching mindfulness in school since 2011. And I, have gone through like 9,000 teachers on two online summer courses. So I kind of know it fairly well. But the breath work, which I've been studying for the last few years, that is now like the action on top of the mindfulness for me. The mindfulness is like the awareness, and it's a great foundation. It's really essential. And then the breath work is the action. And when you put action with awareness, you basically get transformation. So that's what I call it.
I don't know if you can see, I've brought up your site here.
Thanks, Miriam.
It's an absolutely beautiful site that you have, and just wonderful. And I can see their reference to your 9,000 teachers trained online, 35,000 happy clients, including the HSE, healthcare executive staff since 2006, 9,000 teachers trained online, hosted by INTO, Irish National Teachers Organization, and Mayo Ed Centre. Wonderful, wonderful testimonials here to what you do. That must fill you with such pride.
Yeah, I suppose sometimes I kind of just forget that that's there, if you know what I mean, because you know yourself, when you're self-employed, you just keep chipping away. Yes. And it's almost like as if you don't notice those things. You know, you do something and you're waiting to get to the end of it, and then that's finished and you go, okay, great, I have that sorted. And it's almost like, you know, and I'm trying to do that more, trying to kind of celebrate those things a bit more, because, you know, if you were in an office or you were in a situation where you had a team, it'd be like, oh, you got that done, you got through it, fair play to you, you know, and that's brilliant. And people would kind of congratulate you. But when you're working on your own, it's like, okay, I have that done now. And then you just move on to the next thing. So I never really, I don't know. I mean, I sort of don't really look at it. I don't really think about it. I just keep chipping away and moving on with the next thing, you know. But it is great.
It is great. And just take me, I'm just looking here at your authentic energy, authentic rest workshops. Just take us through the programs that you have here. It's quite a lot of programs.
Well, I mean, basically what I do is sort of bespoke programs. So I
Yes.
like kind of working with everybody, you know. I mean, that's probably too broad, you know. Certainly in marketing terms, they'll tell you you can't look after everybody. But I suppose I kind of, in a way, I like a challenge. So I love working with kids. I really do. And I love working with teachers because I know the impact the teachers can have on the kids. And just like you were saying, when you were 6 or 7 or whatever, it's so important what happens then. And it's so important, that whole environment internally and externally. So that's why I'm very passionate about that, because I think that's where I can make the biggest difference. If those kids feel safe and those kids know how to regulate their states, then they're going to be really much more content in their lives as adults and stuff like that. And I love to be able to help in that situation. But I love to work with everybody and anybody as well. So, I mean, these are kind of different programs. Sorry, go on.
No, I just noticed you have breathwork and mindfulness for COVID-19 frontline staff training.
Yeah, so that was just something I was commissioned to do last March, 12 months, with the Centre for Nurse and Midwife Education here in Mayo. So they would be the HSE, the trainers, they train the nurses, they train the staff. So they were putting together their training for COVID-19. So they were basically telling the staff, they were doing these workshops, you know, throughout Mayo, and well, they were doing them all over the country, but this particular group were doing it throughout with Mayo and Roscommon. And what they wanted was, they were telling them all about washing the hands and the breathing and whatever else they were talking about. But they also wanted, as part of their hour-long workshop, they wanted something for well-being and something that could help the staff, because, you know, I mean, it's all very well teaching them and training them what to do to protect themselves and protect their patients. Yes. But I mean, they need to be supported because they're frontline. You know, I mean, they're exposing themselves to everything. They're trying to care for people. Nobody's caring for them. So I was delighted to be asked to do it, because it meant they were going to add this little piece that I had to do that would help them to take care of themselves and regulate their breathing and regulate their whole system, basically their autonomic system, so that they could, just what you were talking about earlier in terms of, you know, the stressful situations. That's when they're going to be hit themselves with something like ill health or, you know, whatever it might be. So if they can boost their system somehow, it really helps. So I was thrilled to be part of that. So that was part of the workshops that all of the staff got to do for COVID. Yeah.
So breathwork. I think it's a very well chosen title there, breathwork. Breathwork, how would you describe it to someone who's a blank canvas on the subject? How relevant is it? What impact does it have?
Okay, so the best way to describe it, it's just like the best way to do anything is to sort of experience it. So even just to see it. So breathing and emotions are bi-directional. So they go both ways. So in other words, if I'm anxious, I breathe like this, which you might be able to see is all kind of high up here in my chest.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so if I'm sitting here and I'm quite relaxed, and then I just say, okay, I'm going to start breathing like this. And I just start breathing like this. And I keep breathing like that for a few minutes. It makes me anxious.
Yes.
So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
So if I decide to breathe like this, that makes me calm. And if I just sit here, and maybe I'm stressed, or maybe I'm not, maybe I'm just kind of neutral, but I just sit here and I start going, and I take a few breaths like that, it just makes me calm. You know.
And do you like, is there a technique for you to actually make the person hear the outward breath, to actually push the outward breath, or can they do it silently, or can they, like?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. There's like, you kind of think breath work, sure, it's simple. We're all breathing all our lives. We all know how to breathe. And we do, but most people are breathing suboptimally. That's the problem. And you don't even know you're breathing suboptimally. Also, a huge percentage of the population are breathing through their mouths, mainly, yes, which again is a very unhealthy way to breathe. But most people don't even notice they're breathing through their mouths. So yeah, it's a funny thing, breath work. There are so many different ways to breathe. And like, people think, oh, take a deep breath and that's it. But even that, take a deep breath. When you say to most people, take a deep breath, this is what you see.
Yes.
And everything lifts up. And like, that's not a deep breath. That's a breath high up in your chest. It's a big breath, maybe, but it's not a deep breath. Deep is like deep under the ocean. It's low, you know.
So do you get them to work on diaphragmatic breathing or abdominal breathing? Taking it, how far down will you get them to take it? Do you get them to breathe into their back?
It depends. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything and anything, but it depends on the person. And like, if you try to teach somebody who knows nothing about it to do abdominal breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, it's too much for them initially.
They'll get heady as well.
Yeah. And also they're trying to get their heads around it rather than just experience something. They're thinking, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong?
Yeah, they overcomplicate it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what I'd be starting with would be very simple breaths, but very effective breaths. Yes. So like anything from, you know, when you focus on your exhale, for example, that brings you into relaxation mode, just focusing on your exhale. And then when you extend your exhale, that brings you further into relaxation mode. And then if you add resistance to your exhale, that enhances it again. Yes. So that's doing nothing except an exhale, which you're doing anyway, but tweaking it slightly, and it has a huge impact. The other thing that I teach a lot of, and a lot of my work is focused on, or kind of based on, is coherent breathing, which is balanced breathing. And again, sounds very simple, and it is very simple, but there's a huge body of research and everything around it, and there's a lot of different ways of doing it. But it's basically balancing the inhale with the exhale. And obviously, basically what it does is creates balance in the body. So you have the stress response system and the relaxation response system. Basically, that's the nervous system. And when you balance the inhale with the exhale, it balances the autonomic nervous system, because basically you go into sympathetic mode, as they call it, which is stress mode when you breathe in, and you go into parasympathetic or relaxation mode when you breathe out. So if you balance both, you're kind of in the middle. So it's an optimal state for like teaching, learning, taking information in, you know, whatever it is you want to do, it's a really good breath to practice.
Well, something I've made no secret about, I have actually said it publicly before, was that at the beginning of the first lockdown, I had, and it totally took me by surprise because I hadn't had these in about 12 years, I had a reoccurrence of nocturnal panic attacks.
Okay.
But it was only last year that I discovered a breathing technique that takes you out of it almost immediately, because you do have to get up and you do feel as though your whole system's been poisoned. And you're trying to get your breathing under control again, and you've got the shakes, and it's all, you know, you don't know whether you're having a stroke but you definitely feel as though there's something rushing through your veins, and it's a real feeling of having been poisoned. And the breathing technique of, you know, inhaling, holding for the count of 4, and exhaling, hold for the count of 4. I do it for 4 of those, 4 times. And within, I would say, 2 minutes, the whole thing has stopped.
That's fabulous. That's box breathing. So you're inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4.
That's it.
Yeah.
Really
a lot of the Navy SEALs use that.
The Navy SEALs?
Yeah. That's very popular with the Navy SEALs. There's a particular guy that teaches breathwork to Navy SEALs, Mark Devine, and that would be one of his main practices. So if the Navy SEALs are using it, it works.
Hang on, yes. And what would they use it for?
Like basically, you know, they're in high stress situations and they need to keep their heads. So they're basically frontline. And I mean, you know, whatever situation they're in, God forbid, I'd hate to be in them, but they use this to train their system into that balanced state so that no matter what is thrown at them, they can kind of come back very quickly and remain calm and deal with the situation, you know.
Yeah, it definitely works, you know, this way. So, and it is, you know, it's breath work, and it's just, I suppose sometimes you can feel, gosh, with all the people I went to see before, how come nobody taught me this? You know, you're discovering it. I'm discovering it at, what was I, 55 at the time? You know, I needed to know this.
I know, a long time ago, but you know something, you know, not too many people knew much about breathwork, and we all tend to dismiss simple things. You know, we all kind of think the complicated things are better, and they're not. Simplicity is the key. We all know this sort of deep down, like go out for a walk, get a bit of fresh air, you know, take your shoes off and stand on the grass or the sand, or get into the sea. They're the things that really work, you know. I mean, so I think lockdown has been a good lesson in terms of that, because it has brought a lot of us back to basics, and the breath is a very basic thing, but like breath is life. You know, when you're born, you take your first breath. When you die, you take your last breath. So you inhale when you're born and you exhale when you die, and in between is your life.
Is your life. Exactly. It's a very, very good way to put it. Absolutely. Talk to me about the University of Massachusetts Medical School. It was 2008 to 2012 that you were there?
Oh, I wasn't actually there. Now that's on my LinkedIn profile, which I'm trying to work on at the moment. So I wasn't really sure what.
That's where I got it.
Yeah. I've been asking somebody like, should this be in here, or where do I put it, or whatever. I don't think it should be in there, because I wasn't actually there. It was just, I did the MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction training with the University of Massachusetts, but they came here to Ireland. Yes. And I did the training here on several.
It still counts. It says dates attended, but I mean, if they came here, then it still counts. You're still dealing with the same course creators, and yeah.
Okay.
I would say it's still, yeah, you could still say that. Absolutely. It's the same course. Okay. What was that like? Was it a good course?
Oh, it was fantastic. And I mean, it went on, you know, it went on further than that as well, because it's basically CPD. It just goes on. The MBSR program goes on forever, because you're constantly updating, upgrading, and learning more, and practicing is the main thing with them. So they give you a blast of something, and then you go away and practice it and work with it, and then you get a blast of something else. So it's very much an ongoing thing. I really loved it when I was doing it. It just really made sense to me. You know, it made sense, and I just like things that make sense. You know, I like simple things that make sense.
And it says here as well that you're actually a yoga Nidra teacher as well.
Yeah, so the yoga nidra, a lot of people don't know what yoga nidra is, and they think it's yoga movement, but it's the opposite. It's actually, you just lie down and you do it's like a relaxation stroke meditation practice. It's, some people say it's meditation, some people say it's relaxation. It doesn't really matter. But for me, it's the most effortless way to just let go and to actually be, you know, instead of thinking and doing, you drop from feeling into feeling and being. And we're constantly thinking and we're constantly doing. And I mean, you know, you can sit down and do a mindfulness practice or whatever, but it's really hard because you're trying to drag your mind back, you know, because it's wandering off all the time. But with the Yoga Nidra, what I like about it is it's effortless. So you lie there, you listen vaguely, you know, if you miss half of it, it's fine. If you miss it all, it's fine. So this is a kind of a creative Yoga Nidra that I trained in, which is sort of really open. Some of them, they want you to stay awake. It's a bit like religion, you know. One religion says this is the way it is, another religion says this is the way, and in Yoga Nidra it's like that. Some of them say you must stay awake, and some of them say you can go to sleep, and some of them say, oh, you know, you must have this sankalpa, it's called, which is like a positive affirmation, and then others say you must not have a positive affirmation, you must just tune into your heart and see what comes up, you know. So the Yoga Nidra that I trained in is like a creative mixture where it's sort of open, freestyle. Take from all of them, but don't take away from any of it. You know what I mean? Use what needs to be used and stick with that structure, because it's very important that it is done that way.
Yes.
But like, suit yourself and be creative with it. So I like to teach it in a way that almost always connects it with the earth, so that we feel grounded, we feel held by the earth, we feel that we can live.
Some lovely photographs of you lying on rocks.
Yeah.
Were you practicing Yoga Nidra there? You were?
Exactly. And I mean, even when I started doing the breath work a few years ago, and I was working with Dan Brule, he was my teacher, and I came back from some training in Holland, and the weather wasn't that great here, but all I wanted to do was go to the rocks and lie on the rocks and do my breathwork practice there. I just didn't want to be inside. I just felt, and I said it to him, and Dan is hilarious because he's completely open as well. Whatever works for you, it doesn't make any difference. Do it on your head if you like, you know. So I said, I just feel I need to go out and do it on the rocks and be in the open air. And he was like, perfect, do it, you know. And it was perfect. And I've been out to Inishturk lying on the rocks doing my breath work. And yeah, oh my God, yeah.
What about this? I noticed there, heart math. What's a heart math coach? You are one of those as well.
Yeah, that's actually breathwork as well. That's one of the types of coherent breathing that they teach, is like a coherent breath. That's that balanced breath through the heart. And you add a positive sort of, you know, you bring up positive feeling, something you're grateful for or whatever into that. So you're doing the coherent breathing, you're putting the system into balance, and then you add your focus, your attention on your heart space, and you kind of bring in like a positive gratitude feeling, something like that. And they also have these little devices which I used for a very long time. I don't really use it anymore. So it's like, you know, the little things that they put on your finger in the hospital, and then you see the heart monitor, and you know, when people flatline, you see the literal flatline, but otherwise it's going like this. So they have these devices now. Other people have them as well, but you clip it onto your ear.
Yes.
And it hooks up to your phone, and then you start your practice. So you can see, you know, all of your lines are kind of chaotic when you're thinking or you're talking or whatever, and then you sit and you do your breathing practice, and you create that coherence in your breath, you know, balance the inhale with the exhale. And then you go from, we'll say red, they have red, green, blue and green, and the red is like when you're in kind of, you know, that mode where you're thinking or talking or busy in the head. And the blue is coherent, but it's kind of, you know, it's sort of neutralish coherent. And then the green is high coherence. And so you can see, you know, the waves and how they are, and you can see whether you're, you know, what color zone you're in, and you get yourself into it. And then, you know, in the beginning, I'd look at it and I go, oh, great, I'm in the green, you know, in my head. And as soon as I do that, I'd go into thinking, oh, I'm so great, I've gotten into the green. And then straight away, I'd be into blue or into red. Do you know?
It works.
It does work. It's kind of what they're trying to do. But when you have something techie like that, and I'm not a big tech fan, but it's very interesting when you're learning to have something like that sort of proves it to you. You can see, I got 10 minutes of coherence, or my head is all over the place. but I know how to change it. And you learn as you go how to change it to bring yourself back into coherence. And then you can see when it happens. So you're not thinking, was I or wasn't I, you know? So yeah, it was really useful. Yeah. And I use that with the kids as well, because seeing is believing for a lot of people, you know?
Yes.
So if you can see it on the screen and then you do some breathing and it brings you into it, it's like, okay, right, you know?
So now blending, I mean, you're blending those things, the MBSR qualification, taking in the yoga nidra, the heart math coach, breath mastery teacher, stress management coach, breathing body mind teacher, but you've also gone the hypnotherapy route as well, aromatherapy and counseling.
Well, that was years ago, and they were only there. I didn't do the full hypnotherapy training. I did the first sort of part of it, which didn't mean that I was certified to actually do it, but I did learn quite a bit. And the hypnotherapy is actually very similar to yoga nidra.
Right.
Yeah. And I would much prefer yoga nidra to hypnotherapy. There's just there are differences, but yeah, I just did that. I was really interested in it because, again, it was the whole mind thing, and it was putting in the affirmations and changing what's going on there. So I really was interested, but I wasn't. The hypnotherapy exactly itself wasn't for me, and the yoga nidra is really my version. It's not hypnotherapy, but it's very close to it in an easier, sort of a more gentle, open way. That it's
more of a self-hypnosis.
It kind of, exactly. And it's also like they call it an adaptogenic practice. You know, there are herbs that are adaptogenic. So like, I don't know what particular herbs they are, but like if I take it and I need, you know, my kidneys to be soothed, for example, this is just my own idea. That's what it'll do for me. And if you take it and you need your heart to be soothed, that's what it'll do for you. So they adapt to what you need. So it's an adaptogenic practice, yoga nidra. So you kind of get what you need by just going through the structure and just sort of letting go, you know. So instead of it being like very prescriptive, like hypnotherapy might be, it's more open and more creative. And I like more open and more creative than more structured and more prescriptive. Yeah. And the counselor, yeah, that was.
How would you, for those practitioners who feel that you always have to keep revisiting the root cause of your malaise or your PTSD or whatever, to come to a better understanding of it. What would your view be on this? Do you feel that that is always necessary, or do you feel, because my reaction in my own case has always been to not let it define me. I know it's always going to be with me, but I don't let it define me, and I have to break the cycle of revisiting and revisiting. So that going sometimes to a therapist, it has, you know, it's a chicken and egg situation, because they're going to bring you back to the situation where you may not particularly want to go. You want to go from here. You know, you've dealt with a lot of stuff already. So where are you on that thinking?
Yeah, you see, I'm not a psychotherapist, and I'm not trained a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, anything like that at all. So like I have the training in mindfulness and the training in breathwork and the other bits and pieces that I've done. So for me, what I use and what I've used and what has had a massive impact in terms of releasing so much from my system is simply breathwork. Now, a different type of breathwork too, that's what I'm saying. There are thousands, there's as many ways to breathe as there are like foods to eat or whatever.
We see now that is taking it from the now then, you know, because that's kind of answering my question in one way.
Okay.
Because you're still talking mindfulness there, aren't you? And you're still, you're actually being, as you said before, learning how to be and simply be, taking you into the moment with the breathing.
And also, but there's a more vigorous type of breathing. I'm sure you've seen Wim Hof. Have you seen Wim Hof, the Iceman?
No. Oh, yes. I've seen him on YouTube. Yes.
In ice tanks and all sorts of, he's done all sorts of mad stuff. But he's really brought attention to breathwork. So the type of breathwork that he does, and loads of other people do, but he just has the cold exposure with it. It would be like continuous connected breathing through your mouth. So like mostly if you're trying to do something for relaxation or calm or just general health, the way to breathe generally throughout the day is through your nose. But if you want to do a breathwork session that again, this is why I like this type of breathwork. The type of breathwork that I learned with Dan Brule, who they call him the Bruce Lee of breath, because he takes, this is the creativity thing, he takes from everything and creates something, and he never says, oh, that's not the right way. Everything is the right way, whatever suits yourself. But his main practice is continuous connected breathing, and so is Wim Hof's. But Wim Hof uses breath holds and the ice exposure. Dan would prefer to be sitting on a beach, you know, in the warmth, which I prefer myself. But it's this continuous connected breathing through your mouth that you do for sessions. And I've done loads of this because I was in Mexico at Dan's Breath Fest, his inaugural Breath Fest, and I did a couple of sessions there, and I participated in like so many sessions there, 3 times a day for 18 days basically. And a lot of those sessions were a full hour, if not more, sometimes an hour and a half, with continuous connected breathing through your mouth. So it's like
You can do this. Yeah, that's the video I saw. Yeah.
So, I mean, Wim Hof does like 30 of those and then does a breath hold and 30 and does a breath hold, something like that. But with Dan's practices and with other practices, we would do a full hour of that. And you kind of think, oh my God. And the first workshop that I did with Dan was here in Ireland because he was visiting several years ago, and I had no idea what it was about, but I just knew I needed to go because my friend had heard him speak in Dublin. He said he's brilliant, he's not pushy, he's not trying to sell stuff, you know, he's really down to earth. And I thought, and he just explained what he was like, and I thought, I want to go there, I have to go there. And I went totally unprepared, no idea what it was about, whatever. And normally I'm prepared, like I like to know, and I always bring my blanket, and I like to be cozy and comfy and stuff. Didn't bring anything with me, not even a notebook and a pen. I never go anywhere without a notebook and a pen. And I arrive late again because I went wrong. I'm never late. I hate being late. So it was like everything was, you know, kind of all over the place anyway to start off with. And then I arrive in and there was no space left on the floor. Everybody else was lying down or on a really comfortable like couch or something and had their blankets. I walk in and there's a plastic chair beside Dan, the teacher, like one of those horrible town hall type plastic chairs.
Yeah.
I couldn't be comfortable on for 5 minutes. And I'm thinking, I can't sit on this and do a breath practice, but I had no choice. So I sat there and I'm up beside the teacher, looking at everybody else. And so he started talking, and I really liked what he said, and it was really interesting and whatever. And then he started talking about this continuous connected breathing, and he started doing it. And because I was close to him, it was handy. I could hear exactly, and I was copying him. And, you know, and then he said, so let's do a session. And as soon as he said, let's do a session, I thought, I'm going to see if I can move people on the and try and get to lie down on the floor. You know, I can't sit in this chair. And so I started to move initially, and so did lots of other people, because they all thought, I need to go to the loo or whatever before we start the session. And he said, hold on. Everybody needs to think everybody thinks they need to do something before you do something else. So I know you need to go to the loo or you need to do whatever. I'll give you a break before we do the practice. So everyone settled down again, including me, and thought, fine. And the next thing, he starts talking, and then he starts doing the breathing again. And then he just continued doing the breathing. And we were all in the breathwork practice before we realized it. I didn't need to lie on the floor. Nobody needed to go to the loo. We just did it. And that's the way he operates. You know what I mean? He didn't give us a break at all. He just went straight into it because he was like, look, here, I'll prove it to you. You don't need to go to the loo, you know? And I'm sitting on this horrible chair, and I just keep doing this continuous breathing. And because he's beside me, it was really handy because he kept prompting me because he was close. I could hear him. And I just kept it going. And I was thinking, my mouth is so dry. This is really weird. My head is all fuzzy. I have tingling all over my body. This is very strange, but I trust the guy and whatever. I kept going. I just cried and cried and cried. And it was just nonstop. My t-shirt was drenched. And, but it felt good. Like,
what was happening to the body and the mind at that point? What was...
Yeah, there was nothing specific in my mind that I knew that was going on, except this was coming out. That's it. I had no idea what it was about or who it was about or any situation. Absolutely no idea. It was just coming out, and that was it. And the more I kept breathing, the more it sort of spun it out of me, if you know what I mean. And basically, you know, the way it's sort of explained is that when you breathe through your mouth, it brings you into stress mode. I said that already, you know. So if you consistently breathe through your mouth, like big breaths like that, and you keep it going for a long time, it sort of brings your body into stress mode, as does going into the ice, brings your body into stress mode. But then you get used to breathing through stress mode. And the thing is that it brings up a lot of stuff that's stuck in your body.
Oh.
And if you keep breathing, you breathe through it. The way Dan explains it is it spins it out of your body. Some people know what it is. I never have a clue. It just goes. I had another experience where I just laughed and laughed, and oh my God, I was embarrassed. I couldn't stop laughing. It was brilliant. Like, but I mean, I was, a bit OTT to say the least, but I couldn't control it. And it just went on and on. It was the funniest time ever. It was some training I did with them in England. And every time I thought of it for months after, and even think about it now, like, it wasn't that funny at all, but I was just, and it was just a release for me.
Yes. Yes.
So I just have had huge release. I can feel it in my body. My body is lighter. I can't explain it.
Yes.
But it's that continuous connected breathing through the stress, brings the stress up in your body. And if you breathe through it, normally when stress comes up, we go and we hold our breath. Do you know what I mean? Or we try to avoid it or whatever. But we never kind of go, oh my God, I can't pay my mortgage.
No, we don't.
We go, oh my God, I can't pay my mortgage. And we stay like that for months going, I can't pay my mortgage. And we're basically not breathing, we're breathing up here.
Yes.
And then, that sort of heavy breathing, as I call it, it just brings your body into stress mode. And your body is going, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is really stressful and you're only making it worse, and you keep breathing. But then the body, it kind of goes, okay, we're in stress mode, but she's breathing through it and she just keeps breathing. And like he always said, no matter what comes up, no matter what happens, just keep breathing. You start crying about something, have a little bit of a cry. The cry is the exhale, like you're, and then inhale and come back, just keep coming back to the breathing and spin it out of your body. And I mean, I cried, I laughed, I did everything for all of those sessions, and phenomenal. I mean, I really have to read back over all of my diaries that I kept, all of that stuff. I mean, I've had one-on-one practices with Dan as well, one-on-one sessions myself, and unbelievable. I mean,
so you got to the point where you could use that with your own clients.
Yeah, I'm not using that yet with my own clients. I've used it with friends and family and stuff like that. But I just feel that the thing that's needed more in terms of being more acceptable, that kind of heavy breathing is a bit strange. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and it's not for everybody because, some people are very afraid and need to be dealt with in a very gentle sort of way. And you can do that in a gentle way. But I think, you can make more of an impact with people starting off with the sort of habitually getting them to breathe through their nose and habitually getting them to have good sleep and to create balance in their systems and stuff like that. You can do a session like that and release some stuff, and stuff will be released. But, from a point of view of kind of helping people to help themselves, if they have little practices that they can do on a daily basis to, create that sense of balance or that sense of release or whatever it might be in their systems. I just feel for now anyway, I mean, I'd love to do more of that and I will do more of that, but I feel for now, and particularly working with schools and teachers, I'm not going to be doing that kind of breath work. It's not really appropriate.
Not with them. I understand totally. I mean, I think for some singers, like I was originally trained in bel canto from a very, very early age. And the difficulty with that sometimes is when you're dealing, this is why I'm agreeing with you that it wouldn't really work for children, because when you're a very small child, and I had a big voice, which is why I ended up in training so young. It was almost a contralto voice for such a small child. If you start, as was the case with me when I was being pushed by trainers, if you start training them in the type of not just diaphragmatic breathing, but breathing into the back and into the abdomen, when you've got a very small child with such, very little volume, that's a lot of oxygen going around their system. And it can make them very dizzy, and it can make them very hyper, or it can make them exhausted, one or the other. It's sometimes, I think, with a child, you do have to be very careful with even breathing, But as an adult, when I got to a stage as a middle-aged woman, I noticed and I started to understand that our almost deformed way of breathing as singers through the years, where you're taking large breaths in and you are holding, and sound is being produced, and you're holding air for long periods of time. It does, just as you were saying, when you're taking intakes of breath, it puts a lot of stress on the body.
Yeah.
Puts a lot of stress on your heart. And certainly when I was a student, nobody spoke about that. They're a lot more conscious today when they're training singers of the stresses that can be put on the heart, etc. And then you look at all of these singers who died very young, suddenly, of heart attacks in their 50s and were very overweight. But I say to myself now that it wasn't so much the weight, it was the stress that was put on their heart, stress put on their bodies, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is, if you're being trained to breathe a certain way, then you see, if you don't know that there's another way to breathe, that becomes your habit.
Yes.
So you could then have the habit of breathing through your mouth all the time and taking big kind of gulps of breath,
which you are doing as a singer all the time. You're doing that. Maybe once at the very beginning of a song will you take a breath in through the nose, but the majority of the time, if you're doing a big aria or a really complex piece, you're holding breath for long periods of time, but you're taking it in through the mouth, of course, all the time too. So it does make you think. I think when breathing is your profession, you do become more conscious of how self-care in that is really important, and keeping yourself well, because I can't tell you the amount of singers I know, including myself. I've got 2 minor heart valve leaks. But I know what it goes back to. It goes back to this training from when I was very, very young, because a lot of people just didn't know what they were doing. They had the reputation and the name, but they didn't really have the education in the subject. They had the name, but they didn't have the education, you know. And there was a lot of that in Ireland.
That's really interesting. That makes total sense, you know, because whatever you practice becomes your habitual way of breathing, you know. And I mean, there's a book by James Nestor. He's not a breath worker, or he's not a doctor or anything like that. He's a researcher. But he wrote this book called Breathe because he just got interested in breath work. And because he's neutral, because he's just a journalist, you know, he just gathered everything from everywhere and put it together. And like, it's just phenomenal. Actually, it's a phenomenal book. But he talks about singers, and he talks about the breathing, and he talks about creating the habit and stuff like that. So it just all makes total sense. And what he did, actually, just as an experiment, crazy experiment, but somebody had to do it, himself and this other guy, they actually plugged their nostrils with silicone and then taped over them so that they couldn't breathe through their noses for a full week or 10 days. I can never remember. Maybe it was even 2 weeks, anyway, something like that, a week or 2 weeks. And they had no choice but to breathe through their mouth all of the time. And then they moved, I know, like 24/7. And then they did stuff like they got on those exercise bikes to see what had happened and different things, and they're sleeping and all of that. And the amount of health problems they got, I'm talking about in a space of 2 weeks, or I can't remember whether it was a week or 2 weeks, but in around that period of time.
Panic, sleep issues.
Sleep apnea.
Yeah.
Snoring, all sorts of stuff, like just, you know, their heart rate and their blood pressure, you name it. And then when they removed the silicone plugs and got back to nasal breathing within a very short period of time, I'm talking about like a few days. Actually, the blood pressure, I think within even minutes, you know, was right down, and everything started to come back online very quickly, just because they started breathing through their noses again. So that just shows, you know, what you're saying. Like, if that kind of breathing becomes a habit, you can do huge damage, you know.
Oh, you can. And gosh, that was some piece of research that they did. Yeah. Just talk to me for a moment about the business between now, let's say, and Christmas. Where do you see the business going? And have you had a eureka moment in the last 16 months that really helped the business?
Oh God, I think I have eureka moments all the time, you know, but I don't know. I always say, and people say to me, I did the New Frontiers, the Enterprise Ireland New Frontiers program in 2019, and they used to say to me, "Will you stop saying you don't know anything about business?" But I feel I don't. I wish I had somebody who would just do all of that for me, because I'm kind of not interested. It's an awful thing to say. But what I want to do is I want to create my practices. I want to get excited about them. I want to do my own practices. I want to encourage kids. I want to encourage everybody. I want to help everybody. I want to get everybody breathing optimally. I want everybody to realize they can help themselves and go, wow, this is amazing. I can feel this way. I didn't think I could feel this way. I can do this. I didn't think I could do this.
Yes.
That's what I want.
If you were to give someone, let's say 3 pieces of advice at the moment, someone who is, you know, aware that they're very stressed and they might be an entrepreneur themselves, but they may be struggling with this situation, what pieces of advice would you give?
I suppose, first of all, that they're definitely not alone, that there are a hell of a lot of people struggling, and that maybe a lot of people don't admit it, but and don't not that they don't even want to admit it, but that maybe they don't even know how to say it, or whether they should say it, or a lot of people think that maybe they're weak if they admit that they're struggling, but a lot of people are struggling. And you go from struggle to being okay, and then back to struggle, and you know what I mean, it fluctuates like that as well. So just, I always say to the kids, if you're sad in the morning, it doesn't mean you're going to be sad for the rest of your life. So I would say just to be aware, first of all, that you're not alone, and secondly, to find some kind of a breathing practice that will support your state, because your state changes, but if you change your breathing pattern, it changes your state. So instead of allowing the state to kind of come upon you like, oh, I'm really sad or I'm really angry or whatever it is, that'll happen. But then it's like, I wonder if I breathed this way, what would happen? Just as an exploration. That's it. It's not like, do this breath, it'll fix you. You know, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people exploring and tweaking and finding out what works for themselves. So there are loads of breath practices, loads of opportunities to check out stuff on YouTube and whatever else, and just try something, but something very basic. Everybody then wants to go full throttle into the big, huge, you know, Wim Hof stuff, you know, and then going in. But like, there's nothing like that either, you know.
It just actually makes me think, although we mentioned yoga just a second ago, what's your opinion about exercise, going full throttle into gyms, and you know, as a lot of people will be tempted to do?
Yeah, again, you know, I'm not an expert on anything like that. I mean, my own thing is, I go for walks, you know, I climb mountains occasionally. I like that sort of stuff. I like to walk on the beach. I like to go for a swim in the sea. I haven't gone yet this year because we haven't had enough sunshine for me to actually get my clothes off. But I like that sort of thing. I like bits and pieces regularly every day. I've never been to a gym. I can't imagine why anyone would go to a gym. I just can't. I'm like, oh my God, I just couldn't go in there.
Outdoors, same here.
I prefer the outdoors, and I prefer to just take it easy. I do a bit of yoga and movement like that, you know what I mean? So I think regular and gentle is certainly for me, but I know a lot of people who get, you know, they go for the run and they feel brilliant and they get the endorphins and they feel really high after it, and it releases the stress. It certainly does. So, you know, everybody's individual, that's the thing, and you have to find your own way. But I think kind of balance is the key in general, so not to be overdoing anything.
Yeah, because you can get that endorphin high from singing, you know. I mean, I know I used to do 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week when I was a Bunratty Castle entertainer.
Wow.
And I mean, 9 months of the year. And I tell you, you do get by the time you're into that second show, you get the endorphin high. Now, we weren't doing huge physical activity, but it was constant singing, from breathing, you can get the same. You know? You
can, yeah, absolutely. And I've had that like as if I've been on drugs, you know. Yes. I'm like, oh God, what is this about? And that's from breathing, which is singing. Absolutely.
And air has passed your lips.
Yeah, but that's interesting. I bet your sleep was interfered with those nights that you were singing.
Yes. Yeah.
Fairly difficult to sleep, I'd say, until early in the morning.
Absolutely. You'd have to stay up longer. I always found I had to stay up longer, and I wasn't someone for going to, I don't drink, so I wasn't boozing or anything like that, but I would find come sort of 12:30 at night, when you're still coming down from your mountain, you just had to stay up longer. You couldn't just go to bed.
No way. Waste of time. Yeah. And that's the third thing, actually, in relation to, you were saying the advice, that would be the third thing, is sleep, the importance of sleep.
Yes.
And again, to kind of train yourself, and the yoga nidra is brilliant for sleep. It's just, that's what I use all the time, you know. And again, sleep isn't a permanent sort of thing that once you get it right, it'll be right every night. It doesn't go like that. There's loads of things that impact it, you know, absolutely. So many things impact it. So it's just the key is not to sort of freak out if you're awake and think, oh my God, I'm going to be awake for hours. I have to get up at whatever time. It's 6 o'clock now. I have to be up at, you know, all of this kind of thing. It's not to kind of freak out and go into stress mode about it. It's to be awake and have something you can use. So like, if I wake up or if I can't get to sleep, I just put on a yoga nidra and I just lie there. Sometimes I'm asleep before, you know, 2 lines are done. Other times I hear it to the end and I think, I'm still not asleep. I just press play again. And off I go. And occasionally, if I have a lot of stuff going on, and I have a lot of stuff going on at the moment, and last night was one of those nights, and I was in Dublin yesterday, so it was up and down in the one day, and you know, a lot of things happening, a lot of phone calls, and there's some stuff going on in my family and that was all going through my mind. It was just going through my mind, you know. I wasn't worrying or anything, but it was just all there, you know. So I pressed the thing, did the Nidra, still awake, did it a second time, did it a third time. I fell asleep at some point during the third one, and that's it. But I don't think, oh, I've done it and I'm not asleep. Oh, I've done it twice. I don't do that. I just go, press play, press play, press play. And I know that I fall asleep at some point. And even if I'm not asleep and I'm listening to it, what it does is it brings your body into that relaxation mode so that you're getting rest anyway. But if you're lying there going, oh, I can't believe I'm still awake. How come I can't sleep? Everybody, you know, and winding yourself up and going, I'm going to be wrecked tomorrow and all of that, that's just bringing you into stress mode. So like, you know, if you can, it's easier said than done. But if you get into the habit, it's all habit, actually.
It's all habit. I agree with you totally. Oh, Derval, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're a huge example of how something that's born out of adversity can take you on a journey that can help all these thousands of people that you've helped. And look at her website, you'll see it's all there to read. Everything about her is there, and great programs, all customized. And I understand totally where you're coming from when you say, I don't really want to be involved in the business side. I want to work with the people. You know, I want to actually do the job. I wish we solo entrepreneurs could just do that. Unfortunately, it's hard.
We just need funding, that's all.
Exactly, so that we can get the business people in to do the job for us. But look, you're doing it, and what a fantastic career, great qualifications and a great approach. And you know, clearly you're very affable, you're well able to reach out to people. And I would advise anybody who feels that they might be touched by this interview and they have something that may not be PTSD, but perhaps stress issues, stress management issues, male or female, get in touch with Derval. Her Facebook handle, Twitter handle, LinkedIn handles, they're all there on the screen. You've got her website there, www.c, it's the Irish word c.ie. And, you know, there's a huge resource of material on her website. Go have a look at it. Derval Dunford, thank you so much for being on the show today. I was delighted to have you on.
Miriam, thanks a million, and thanks for making everything so easy and just enjoyable, having the chat. You know, there's nothing like having the chat.
That's it. And look, it's people who connect with people. You know, there's no point in just putting up your brand there. They want to know, well, you know, what's that person's story, and they want to connect with you. And I think definitely people will have done that through this interview. So I'm delighted you said yes and came on. Terrific. Everybody. Brilliant. This is Miriam from Business Block. On Mondays, we have Women's Inspire members on the program from the Women's Inspire Network. On Thursday, Business Block runs local business, national business, and international business. So have a look at those, and we'll see you hopefully next Monday. Good to see you. Cheers.